Hey everyone, Steger here, and welcome to the 6th episode of my City Skylines 2 series, where we're currently building a medium-sized town, currently named Dalefield, but I do want to change that, so I'm not really going to mention the city name much this episode. So in the past 2 episodes we expanded out the suburb here, as well as the suburb here. And now that the city's grown a little bit, we have a really significant demand for commercial and industrial. And if we go into the game statistics, I also believe that I have quite high unemployment for the size of the city, as my residential demand has been very low since there are no jobs available and buildings are already unoccupied for perhaps that reason, but perhaps others. So in this episode I've decided that I'm going to expand the level of commercial areas in the downtown. It's always kind of hard to see with this UI, but there is a little bit of commercial along this main street, but I think we need more, and a little bit of offices there. So the first thing I want to do is add some commercial along the main road heading out to the north of the city, which is just here, and just rezoning some of the existing residential and incrementally expanding the downtown rather than doing it all in one go, or I guess this episode kind of can count as all in one go, but it's not that significant. But I do want the commercial kind of branching off onto the other main roads and just being like solely down this main street, as the city's now kind of getting big enough where that can be justified. But here I'm just doing the same thing on another corner, just expanding out a little bit into where this other main road goes, and then keeping that little 3x3 store on the corner because I want to make use of the sort of space and street frontages that you have for a corner store, so want the ratio of like depth to width to be similar on each side of the roads. And here we've now expanded out the main street to about 800 meters in length, so this is going to be the extent that I expand that for today, and just going through on the other side and replacing some industrial that I think I built temporarily to satisfy demand for jobs, but this might have been the first industrial area that I built in episode 1, I can't recall now. But just incrementally changing the land uses as there's demand for it, and I still want quite a large portion of the commercial clustered in the downtown. And here we're just going through and zoning up along the railway line. I was hoping to put a railway station at about that point, but unfortunately they're far too large for a small town and require like a significant piece of work in terms of infrastructure to actually get them to fit in there. But also just wanted to, you know, not solely expand on the main street, as I've probably said like 5 times already. And then just going through and again with that sort of incremental expansion and gentrification or upzoning or rezoning or whatever you want to call it, adding in some of the medium density row houses around the sort of fringes of the commercial, where this would make most sense as it's closest to the city centre. And now that we've zoned up some commercial in the downtown area. To add more jobs to the city, I want to add some industrial down this end of Highgate. I already made a district as a reminder to myself as to what to put here, but I'm thinking for this, I do want the blocks to be a reasonable size. I think this will do for along here, but I want to see how I can make it all work. So I also want it to be distinct from the suburban area as well. If we do this and make one more road for this residential here, then we can have it, maybe the block length can be equivalent to the width of 3 of these blocks. Also, I like how you can do this now because, well, not exactly every road lines up perfectly, so being able to do that adds to the realism in a way, but it shouldn't be overdone because doing this should be where it makes sense rather than just for the sake of it. So if we take this out all the way, then that lines up with that. And then this one should line up with that, and I think it's a good block size for an industrial area. It's still quite walkable in that the perimeter is probably only like 600 meters or maybe 700, but allows for the slightly larger buildings that you would expect for factories and the like. And I'll go through and zone this up so that said factories are actually a much larger footprint than the household, so I'll probably do 6x6 for the most part. And now we're coming through and just extending out the Highgate district outline to cover this new area, and then coming through and starting to zone up the industrial. I had a little bit of difficulty with some of these blocks as there's quite a significant terrain change, and had to reduce the size of some of the buildings to allow for space in between for the sloped terrain to form, rather than having the back of the lots create a weird shape to try and fit in with the building next to it. Thankfully these next lots were a little bit flatter, so I didn't have to do that here. Although I think at this point I might have been running a little bit low on the demand, and it started creating the smaller industrial buildings as a way to fill in the spaces rather than the full-sized 5x6 or 6x6 buildings. Plus also you got that thing where it prefers a certain road sometimes. And then on the other side of the main road, just expanding out the industrial a bit more here. Again, part of this block had some terrain differences, but part of it was okay, so I just separated out the buildings where I needed to. And here coming along and forming a sort of border around the industrial area for the sake of not having the pollution absolutely destroy my residential suitability adjacent to this area. I do wish that the industrial wouldn't create so much pollution in this new City Skylines 2 game as it did in City Skylines 1, but it still seems to have a negative effect on the ability for houses to want to live next to it, which isn't always realistic, but is sometimes. And here we're just watching the final buildings grow in, and then adding a tram stop on the main road and just extending out the tram network a little bit into this area. And with this industrial area built, I now think it's time we did a little bit more suburban expansion and possibly some more industrial for future demand for jobs in this area around this side of the city, as we've now expanded quite away from the downtown in this direction, but need to keep the city relatively balanced since towns generally grow along in some direction and don't just randomly grow out in that direction for no reason. So yeah, let's start by doing the road layout. The tricky part here is at some point I want the grid to transition to being aligned with this angled road rather than the existing street grid. So that'll be a bit of a challenge to get done. I am also thinking that this road will go somewhere out here, being the sort of nearest main arterial road with streetcars running down it, as this is about 800 meters. We'll round that up to a kilometer given that slightly reduced scale in City Skylines, but if we extend this out to at least here to begin with, because this also seems like one of the main crosstown routes in the area. So this road can come through and then, so if we go like that, at least out to being in line with this road, we can worry about the rest of it later. I notice as well, if you build the roads beyond the place where you want to intersect them, it seems to do the zoning a lot better too. I mean, that can work, or perhaps this park can go all the way through here and this road starts only on this side. If we go for the maximum spacing that will achieve zoning, okay, that seems to have completely broken it at this point. So this is now getting to almost 300 meters in length, so I want to think about perhaps up to there, and then beyond this point I might change it so that this block splits in two so that you don't have two larger blocks for the area. Okay, that's quite a way out, so I probably want to do a road to about here. This is going to break some of the zoning, but it seems to be okay. And then perhaps one more of these roads. But if we go to 312, and I'm thinking perhaps this road curves up here to run along the side of this suburb instead, but I don't think that was lined up well either. And then perhaps this could come right through to here, and that one could come right through as well. We'll see how this works. It looks a bit awkward, but roads aren't always perfect. We could even do off of here 90 degrees like that and do something else with that area in between, or find something to put there. So that certainly extends this out. Then I want to go from, this is our main road. If we take it right through, it will make a really awkward junction here is what it's going to do. Perhaps if we shift that node back a little bit and create this into a curve, we can achieve a better outcome that more or less has the same alignment as what I was trying to do before. That's marginally better, but still not great. And then following on with this layout, then if we go, say, from here all the way through, you get this here, which is going to result in something a bit clunky, but will do. And then as this is a old neighborhood, I didn't necessarily want all of the roads to be perfectly aligned in a grid and have some offset so that they form T-intersections instead. So if we go to there, no, I made this hard for myself, didn't I? And then let's just extend out these roads a little bit more in this grid style, and then I'm going to extend them out a little bit further and then leave that, because I think we'll come back to that in the next episode, as I'm not sure what to build out in this direction yet and need to give it some more thought before I set down the road layout. And as much as this looks like a mess right now, I'm going to start zoning it up. And first I think it would be good to add in some commercial in this area. It seems all our like major public services are pretty well looked after, except I don't think we have any post offices or anything. So I might add one of them in the suburb just to give it something that stands out a bit more and makes it a bit more unique than just simply putting standard commercial buildings or residential buildings everywhere. I might just shift this a little bit closer to this area since the ground is a bit flatter, or doesn't really seem to be that much flatter actually, so might just put it on the larger block where the terraforming can take place. So if we put it there, then the roads will sort of work around it. That seems to work. And then just creating this neighborhood center, I want just a little bit of commercial around here, not too much, as it's not a hugely important suburb at this point. Plus I might also do commercial along this strip of the main road. We'll go up to there, and anything smaller than that I'm just going to do as parks because they're a bit awkward. Except we can have a few small stores but not many. And I also might do a little bit of high density row houses along the street here for just a touch, and see if they actually build in though, because they don't seem to want to because the pollution and things. So I think this will do for the commercial strip once it all zones in for this area for the moment at least. The suburb of Harlem extends right through into where the school is, but I might adjust the boundaries a little bit, but I think it will extend out here, and I can do this park that I've marked out in this area here between the two suburbs, and that can be the feature that separates them both. That will be a project for a coming episode, maybe the next one, because I don't think I'll get around to it today, and also just want to work on a bit of expanding out first with things that actually have people use them or in them, rather than a park which at this stage in the game would only really serve as a visual feature. So I might just include that there for the moment, and that certainly extends out the suburb of Harlem quite a bit. So I'll go through and zone these up off camera and I ended up zoning up this whole area off camera, which included adding some commercial along the side of the main road adjacent to the industrial area, as the ground pollution was quite high and wasn't really all that suitable for residential areas to grow in. I also skipped over all of the zoning in of these houses as it was quite repetitive, and I don't feel that stuff's that interesting anyway, but you've got a nice little neighborhood and the streetcar runs down here. I don't recall if I set the line up. No, I think it still only goes to here. So we could actually extend this now. So we take it 1, 2, 3, maybe about here, and that gives just a little bit more to this network. So if we drag this over, and then since this is in the median, it'll turn back on itself pretty easily. I've got it set up now anyway, so that runs through from the roundabout through kind of the commercial part of the suburb, like the town centre area. That's a little bit steep, that hill, but that'll have to do. and then past this post office, which we place down, and somewhere out here, I think that's the stop there where there's that wide median, but it goes out through the suburb, and in the coming episodes I'll decide what to do with this area. I'm not 100% sure right now. I just want to see how our demand for schools and things end up, otherwise I'll put a park there. And for the time being, I've just zoned out this far on these roads, just enough to get the shape of the zoning in correctly on the right roads, so I don't have to worry about it later. And then also in coming episodes I'll do something about this direction. I kind of want this main road to zigzag a little bit, maybe across this way and then come around and head a little bit back in this direction, but I've also put a little district down here to remind myself to establish a little beachside settlement in this inlet, and that would eventually connect up to the city once we actually grow out this far. But that's not the immediate plan to build all that way out, but it certainly gives a reason for this arterial road coming along here to actually serve a real purpose rather than just going out of the city for the sake of it. Also, I think in the coming episodes we probably need to fill in some of these gaps. A lot of this is just pollution, because if you look at the residential suitability, it's not that great. And I put offices here, but we don't have any office demand either, so probably need more educated citizens for that. Also, one day I want to do a suburb on this side of the river, so that'll probably be within the next few episodes, I'd say, because we've actually built out quite far in this direction now, as well as this direction, adding in that industrial that we built earlier in the episode. And I think everything is slowly coming together, at least within the inner area of the city. I'm not sure how far, like how big I want the city to be. I guess it depends on availability of mods and the map editor as to how long I'll build on this map for, because it's not the greatest. I also want to see, so this is pretty much just a straight downhill, so there's not really any sort of terrain constraints, like proper constraints, but it's still, in saying that, quite like steep, or relatively steep for what you would expect, because this just looks like flat land, but actually it's just a constant slope down from these hills, and makes for a little bit of a messy area. Like if you look at some of these houses, they're actually on quite big cliffs, so I've just left a little bit of space in between. But I think on that note, we'll call it a day for this episode. So thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this one, make sure to leave a like on the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.